Well, for more on which industries may benefit or lose from U.S.-China trade tensions, I'm joined by Joel Trachtman. He's a professor of international law at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Rachelle.
So we've heard a lot about the countries that stand to lose as a result of U.S.-China trade tensions. But let's start with how countries who see an opportunity in all this are positioning themselves.
Well, I think, as you've suggested, you've got agricultural producers from places like Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Turkey, that may benefit. They'll have to ramp up capacity in order to produce. And we'll see a movement of these commodities from the United States to other places. So the United States producers are still producing. They haven't disinvested in this segment. And so U.S. pork may go somewhere else, and French pork may go to China. And so we won't see large changes in investment, but we will see costlier commodities because the tariffs will add to costs and transportation costs. And you'll have less efficient production because you'll be moving to producers that aren't necessarily as efficient as the current sources of the products. You'll also see environmental problems because of the greater use of fuel to transport these commodities to different places. So Airbus may do better. It'll take a while for Airbus to ramp up production of more airplanes, but they may get more orders. One question for all sorts of businesses and for governments is how long will these problems persist, and how do I invest in response to these problems? It may be that President Trump is not in office for a long time. It may be that this trade policy that he's espoused isn't a continuing trade policy for the United States. The Congress may reassert itself, and in elections we may see a move towards a more consistent trade policy, more consistent with the past.
And we certainly may see some changes with the congressional elections coming up at the end of the year. Now, you talked about some of these businesses. So which industries are the biggest winners and losers based on not just the tariffs in place so far, but the uncertainty that comes with these proposed tariffs as well?
Well, I think any manufacturer that uses steel or aluminum in the United States is a loser. And actually, some of the producers of more finished steel and aluminum products will be losing, assuming that we have extensive tariffs on steel and aluminum. So far, the Trump administration has threatened, has acted with respect to some states, but has held back with respect to a number of important states. So those steel and aluminum tariffs have, as you say, they've affected planning. They've made things more uncertain, but they haven't yet bitten. So manufacturers that use those inputs, and also manufacturers that use parts that are constructed from steel and aluminum, which has become more expensive, will be hurt by these tariffs. Who will be helped? Manufacturers, steel and aluminum manufacturers who create raw steel and aluminum will be helped in the United States. But again, they don't know for how long they will be helped, how long these policies will remain in place.
And we know that there are farmers who are worried, especially since there have been reports questioning whether or not China is cutting back on buying U.S. soybeans or not. So is there enough demand in the U.S. or abroad to offset that potential loss of exports to China?
Well, there will be a shift in supply. So sorghum and soybeans and other agricultural products will go somewhere else. And the Chinese will be saying, how will we fill our needs for these products in the future? And they'll be looking to Brazil and to Argentina and Mexico. But those countries would have to ramp up production, and they can't do it automatically. So they'll have to divert from other markets while the United States products go to their traditional markets. So it's a circumstance of shifting around how the supply works without necessarily changing the investment and the actual amount in the short term of capacity. Of course, if this situation persists in the long term, you'll see investment patterns change and shifting capacity in these products.
And we know that China and other countries are still moving forward with their multilateral trade pacts, and the U.S. is obviously still renegotiating NAFTA. So do these U.S.-China trade tensions risk either scuttling some of these trade pacts that are still in the works, or could we see more impetus to get them done given the uncertainty?
Well, the United States has looked longingly at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and we recognize that that's the 21st century trade deal that would have addressed a number of our concerns on e-commerce, on state-owned enterprises, on intellectual property. And so those countries of the TPP have gone forward without the United States. We're now starting to think about a transatlantic trade and investment partnership or some kind of arrangement with Europe. But one problem is that the United States has limited negotiating capacity. We've lost some of our professionals in negotiations in Asia and in Europe. And so it'll be tough to move forward, especially with an administration that doesn't necessarily have a clear idea of what it wants to achieve, and often where what it wants to achieve doesn't make sense either to the United States or to its trade partners. For example, the whole idea that bilateral deficits are an important issue is a mistake. And when we go and negotiate with Korea or Mexico or Canada or even the European Union about those bilateral deficits, they wonder, how can we respond to this when a large cause of the United States deficit is its savings rate compared to its investment rate, right, which will only get worse with the new tax bill that just went into effect.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your insights, Professor Joel Trachtman of Tufts University.